You've probably heard the phrase Trail of Tears, right? It's something we learn in school, usually described as the single terrible moment in American history. But here's the thing. For the Choctaw Nation, that phrase doesn't just fall short. It kind of misses the whole point. Their story isn't about one trail. It's about a full century of removals, a history that has been overlooked for way too long. So let's dig into what that really means.
So let's start with that big question. If Trail of Tears is the term everybody knows, why do historians and leaders from the Choctaw Nation actually correct people when they use it? Well, the answer reveals a much bigger, more complex history that has been almost completely erased by that one single phrase.
Okay, this right here gets to the absolute heart of it. On one side, you've got the Trail of Tears. It's a term that came from the Cherokee people, and it's about their specific, horrific forced march in 1838. But the Choctaw used the plural, removals, because for them, this wasn't just one event. It was a whole series of devastating upheavals that stretched for over 150 years. So when we use the wrong term, even if we don't mean to, we're basically erasing a century and a half of their unique story. To really get a grip on the scale of this loss, you first have to understand what was there to begin with. So let's take a look at the incredibly sophisticated and deeply rooted society the Choctaw had built over thousands of years. Yeah, this was not some simple nomadic society. No way. The Choctaw had a highly organized world. Their entire society was split into two main groups, and you actually had to marry someone from the opposite group. In their kinship system, it was matrilineal. This is a huge deal. It meant children belonged to their mother's clan, and a boy's most important male role model wasn't his dad. It was his mom's brother. Think about how that just completely flips the script on family structure compared to what we're used to. And politically, they had a semi-democratic system, with 3 districts, each with its own elected chief, or mingo, and then all meet up to debate national issues. And wow, were they masters of their land. The Choctaw were amazing farmers. Corn was the big one. They were so good at it, they often had these huge surpluses that they could trade with other tribes, and later on with Europeans. They were also expert hunters, which created this really balanced and prosperous economy that had kept them going for literally thousands of years. But this stable world, it started to crumble. It was under this immense, relentless pressure from the United States government. This whole push for land, fueled by the idea of manifest destiny, this belief that American expansion was basically God's plan, it created a crisis that would end up tearing the Choctaw Nation apart from the inside out. As this pressure just kept ramping up, the Choctaw became deeply, tragically divided. 2 main factions popped up. One side kind of thought, look, this is inevitable. The only way to survive is to move. But the other side wanted to stand their ground. They believed the U.S. government could be forced to honor its own treaties. This split was just heartbreaking, and it made it almost impossible for the tribe to fight back with a united front. And President Andrew Jackson, well, he was a shrewd and ruthless strategist, and he played these divisions like a fiddle. He sent his guys to approach the Choctaw leaders one by one, never as a group, and they offered personal bribes, private land, cash payments, anything to get them to agree to removal. And it worked. It was an absolutely devastating strategy that just sowed mistrust and shattered any chance of unified leadership. All of this pressure, all this division, it all led to this one moment. The Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek in 1830. It was signed under incredible duress, and it was the very first removal treaty put into action under Jackson's Indian Removal Act. The deal was basically an impossible choice. Give up all of your ancestral lands in Mississippi, or stay and submit to U.S. law, which would mean the end of your existence as a sovereign nation. So, faced with that choice, thousands of Choctaw got ready to move west. But what happened next wasn't some orderly relocation. It was a full-blown humanitarian catastrophe, just pure chaos, corruption, and unbelievable suffering. The first big group, about 4,000 people, left in October of 1831. They were completely unprepared for what was coming. The U.S. government was supposed to organize the whole thing, but it was a disaster from the start. They marched straight into one of the harshest winters on record, and the journey just dragged on and on and on and on for nearly 6 agonizing months, finally ending in March 1832. The conditions were just horrific. I mean, can you even imagine facing a freezing winter with barely any shelter or warm clothes? Food and supplies were almost non-existent, and what they did get was often spoiled. And on top of all that, diseases like cholera and smallpox just ripped through the camps.
It was a perfect storm of disaster, made so much worse by the total incompetence and, frankly, the complete lack of care from the officials in charge. In just this one removal, it's estimated that nearly 2,500 Choctaw men, women, and children died. That's a quarter of the entire nation just wiped out in a matter of months from disease, starvation, and exposure.
There's really no other way to say it. The people who survived it, they just called it a nightmarish trip. That simple, haunting phrase, it just says everything about the trauma they went through.
And as if all that wasn't bad enough, their suffering was made worse by pure greed and corruption. The federal agents who were hired to manage the removal, they stole money and supplies that were meant for the Choctaw people. Tribal historians say that an investigation later found the embezzlement was so widespread, so bad, that the government just covered it up rather than let the scandal get out. Now, as absolutely devastating as that 1830s removal was, it was only one chapter. And this is the part that changes everything, the reason we're having this conversation. The displacement of the Choctaw people wasn't a single event. It was a long, drawn-out process that went on for more than 100 years. This timeline just lays out the whole painful story. It didn't start in 1830. The pressure started way back in the 1790s. Then you have the Great Removal. But it didn't stop there. In the early 1900s, another wave of Choctaw were just put on trains and dropped off in Ardmore, Oklahoma, with absolutely nothing. And get this, as recently as the 1950s, a government program was designed to force assimilation by moving families into big cities, cutting them off from their community and their culture. This is why it has to be called removals, plural. But here's the amazing part. This story, it doesn't end in tragedy. It is also one of the most incredible stories of resilience you will ever hear. Because despite a century of trauma and displacement, the Choctaw people survived. They rebuilt. And today, they are thriving. The moment survivors arrived in what was called Indian Territory, they started to rebuild. I mean, immediately. Out of the ashes of that nightmare journey, they created a new government with a constitution, they built schools and churches, they started farms and businesses, and for 75 years, they successfully governed themselves. It's just a powerful testament to their ability to persevere after going through the unimaginable. And that spirit, oh, it is absolutely alive and well today. The modern Choctaw Nation is an economic and cultural powerhouse, contributing over $1.2 billion to the Oklahoma economy every single year. And today, the nation is working so hard to heal the deep wounds left by all those removals. That means actively finding and connecting with Choctaw people who were scattered all over the country. It means rebuilding a sense of history through dedicated programs. And maybe most importantly, it means revitalizing their language and their culture, making sure that everything that was so viciously attacked can be preserved for generations to come. So we end up right back where we started. By insisting we use the word removals, the Choctaw Nation isn't just being picky about a historical term. They are reclaiming a century of their own story. And it really forces all of us to ask a tough question. What other histories have resimplified or condensed or just plain erased simply by using the wrong words?